On the day of the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, my husband's childhood sweetheart, barely clothed, cried out and threatened to kill herself, claiming that my brother had violated her. The noblewomen pointed at my family's back and spat in disgust. Miss Sue is a candidate for the imperial selection. How dare young Marquis Gu be so audacious? He should be dragged out and beaten to death with clubs. I presented the golden pardon token, earned by my father and brothers who died on the battlefield, to plead for mercy. In the end, His Majesty pardoned the death penalty and arranged a marriage for my brother and Su Wanyue. Who would have thought that my husband would publicly break both of my brother's legs? He sighed softly in my ear. If His Majesty doesn't vent his anger now, he might remember it later and exterminate the entire Gu family. My brother and I endured the humiliation, but 7.5 months later, my husband's childhood sweetheart gave birth to an 8-pound baby boy. The younger brother cried out in anguish, "I've said it all along. I never even touched a single finger of hers." He had repeated those words countless times that day, yet no one believed him, and they even mocked him for being a coward who wouldn't own up to his actions. Dragging his crippled leg, he picked up the child to seek justice from the emperor, but his husband smashed his skull from behind. Just as I was about to scream, he also grabbed me by the throat. "If you siblings make a scene, how will Wanyue and the child live in the future?" With ferocity in his eyes, he strangled me to death as I was about to give birth. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself reborn back to the day of the birthday banquet. This time, I directly tied up my younger brother and locked him in the side hall, but Xiao Qingmai once again claimed that someone had tarnished her purity. Su Wanyue's forehead bled from hitting the dragon pillar in the great hall, and she trembled tearfully in the arms of several court ladies. "Wanyue has lost her purity. I have let down the ancestors of the Su family, and I have no face to face the emperor. Let me die." The court ladies shot me a sharp, accusing glance. One by one, they were filled with righteous indignation, almost wishing they could spit on me. The Gu family is truly audacious, defending the nation at the border. Yet upon returning, they dare to assault prospective palace maids, relying on their military achievements to act so recklessly. They even defy the emperor's authority, utterly lawless, and they claim to uphold strict military discipline. How dare they act so brazenly right under the emperor's nose? Who knows how many women at the border have been ravaged by them? I glanced at the man who was tightly shielding Su Wanyue by his side, my husband, Fu Yunjing. Suppressing the sarcasm at the corner of my mouth, I spoke softly. "Miss Su, have you looked clearly and thought it through? Was it really my brother who took your innocence?" Su Wanyue stiffened, her tears falling even more fiercely. "I am already Jiu Yanhui's person. Why must you humiliate me like this? Madam, I cannot go on living." She made as if to dash herself against the pillar, but was quickly restrained by several officials' wives who rushed to hold her back. Fu Yunjing stepped forward and roughly pulled me over. His face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. "Jiu Ling, your brother has committed such a despicable act, worse than that of a beast. Instead of teaching him to admit his mistake, you come here throwing your weight around and pressuring Wanyue. The honor that the men of the Gu family have earned by shedding blood and laying down their lives has been completely tarnished by you and your brother." My hand ached from being gripped by his iron-like grasp, yet I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Half an hour ago, I personally tied Jiu Yanghui with a water-soaked cowhide rope, using the same method for binding prisoners of war, and locked him in the side hall. How could he have escaped to come back and ruin Su Wanyue? I lifted my eyelids, fearlessly meeting his gaze. "Fu Yunjing, are you certain it was my brother?" His brows furrowed sharply, and he gritted his teeth. Spraying spittle onto my face, I personally knocked that beast unconscious, tied him up, and saved Wanyue. How could I not recognize my own brother-in-law? My heart sank. Fu Yunjing's resolute tone made me feel somewhat uneasy. Could it be that Jiyu Yanghui managed to escape from the side hall? Madam Fu, how much longer are you going to push people too far? An elderly noblewoman scolded me sharply. As the wife of Lord Fu, instead of thinking of sharing your husband's burdens, you only shield the disgraceful libertine from your own family. You are simply unworthy of being the mistress of the Fu household. Do you want Lord Fu to bend the law for you, protect your scoundrel of a brother, and force Miss Su to her death before you are satisfied? Fu Yunjing glared at me fiercely. Jiyu Lingyi, stop making a fool of yourself. I snorted coldly, my gaze sweeping over the self-righteous crowd. It seems that regardless of whether Miss Su has lost her innocence today, this pot of dirty water is going to be poured over my brother's head. Su Wanyue looked as if she had suffered the greatest insult, tears streaming down her face. With trembling hands, she pulled a blood-stained handkerchief from her bosom and threw it fiercely at my feet, sobbing as if each word were dripping with blood. I, Su Wanyue, am a pure and innocent maiden of the inner chambers, not some shameless, self-degrading prostitute. If your Jiyu family refuses to acknowledge me, I will die right here today, and never tarnish the slightest bit of your family's reputation. As she spoke, she turned and rushed to crash into a pillar, but the officials' wives quickly held her back to calm her down. Silly girl, you mustn't do that. It's all the fault of that damned playboy from the Jiyu family. You've already suffered such unjust humiliation, it's truly pitiable. But you mustn't throw your life away and let that inhuman beast have his way. As they tried to persuade me, they made no effort to hide their contempt. Miss Su is a candidate for the imperial harem, destined to bear children for the royal family in the future. Your Jiyu family is just a minor marquisate. Do you think you're some kind of hot commodity, expecting someone with a clean reputation to slander you? Fu Yunjing furrowed his brows, grabbed my wrist, and put on a show of concern for my well-being. Lingyi, stop making a scene, you should quickly admit it. Prepare the 3 letters and 6 etiquettes, go to the Su family to propose marriage on Yanhui's behalf, and then plead for mercy from His Majesty. Your Majesty is benevolent and kind, perhaps there is still a chance to spare Yang Hui's life. Otherwise, just the charge of defiling a candidate for the imperial selection would be enough to warrant the execution of his entire family. And that would be a light punishment. In my past life, I was deceived by this very facade of his. I truly believed that Yang Hui had made a mistake while drunk, and out of guilt, I sent half of the Zhenbei Marquis's estate to the Su family as a betrothal gift. I treated Su Wanyue as if she were an ancestor. As a result, she gave birth to a bastard at just 7.5 months, ruining my entire family. At this thought, a wave of nausea churned in my stomach. I forcefully pulled my arm out of Jiyu Yunjing's grasp. Dream on if you think my Jiyu family will ever let Su Wanyue marry into it. Fu Yunjing's face immediately darkened, his gaze turning fierce and sinister. Before he could react, the crowd began to stir. Su Wanyue's father, Lord Su, hurried over. His face was livid, trembling with anger as he walked straight up to Su Wanyue and raised his hand, delivering a sharp, resounding slap, slapping Su Wanyue to the ground. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. You disgrace to the family, how dare you still have the face to live? Guards, drag this unchaste and impure thing away and strangle her to death, lest she tarnish the Su family's reputation. 2 Su family servants stepped forward in response. Daughter will not trouble father to do it, Su Wanyue wailed, pulling the silver hairpin from her own head and without hesitation, thrust it toward her own neck. The crowd instantly erupted into commotion. Some gasped in shock, others rushed to stop her, and still others grabbed hold to dissuade her. Madam Fu, are you just going to stand by and watch? If it weren't for your brother committing such a beastly act, how could Miss Su have come to this? That shameless scoundrel of your family drove that girl to her death. Can the Jiyu family's conscience be at ease? I watched this farce with a cold gaze, saying nothing. A flicker of ruthlessness flashed in Su Wanyua's eyes as she tightened her grip on the hairpin and suddenly exerted force. Phut! The hairpin pierced the skin, and blood instantly gushed out. The officials' families gasped in panic. What a sin! The Jiyu family is forcing someone to their death. Fu Yunjing's face turned pale as he stepped forward and snatched the silver hairpin from Su Wanyua's hand. Summon the imperial physician. Quickly, summon the imperial physician. He quickly tore off the hem of his clothes and pressed it against Su Wanyua's bleeding neck. Surrounded by a crowd of people, Su Wanyua blinked weakly. Out of the corner of his eye, he glanced at me, showing no sign of despair. Instead, there was even a flicker of triumphant glee. Once Su Wanyua was settled, Fu Yunzing strode over to me in a few steps. You poisonous woman, he cursed angrily, delivering a sharp, resounding slap that struck my face with force. I stumbled and fell to the ground from the blow. My palms scraped across the cold floor, instantly breaking the skin and drawing blood. My left cheek burned with a fiery pain, and even my left ear began to ring. Fu Yunjing pointed at me, his eyes sharp with a venomous intensity. You have such a cruel heart. Determined to drive someone to their death just to satisfy yourself. My Fu family cannot tolerate a woman as heartless and unrepentant as you. Today, I will divorce you. The surrounding officials and their families immediately chimed in, even wishing they could applaud in celebration. Lord Fu did the right thing. Such a venomous woman deserves to be divorced. I say, her brother is a wastrel, so what kind of decent person could she be? Who knows how she seduced men before marriage? Lord Fu and Miss Su are truly unlucky to have encountered this sister and brother. Vicious words poured down like a torrent. They were just itching to throw rotten eggs and spoiled vegetables at me. I swallowed the coppery taste in my throat, gritting my teeth against the swelling on my cheeks and the sting in my palms, and pushed myself up. Catch them in the act. Catch thieves with the evidence. Who among you saw my brother harassing Su Wanyua with your own eyes? The crowd exchanged glances, all momentarily stunned. Fu Yunjing sneered coldly. You won't give up until you see your own coffin. He was walking quickly toward a dim corner of the hall and kicked a burlap sack fiercely, which was guarded by several guards. He bent down and pulled off the tightly tied rope at the mouth of the sack. Reaching his hand inside, he fumbled for a moment before suddenly pulling out a flowing cloud jade crown. He raised the jade crown high and turned to the crowd. Take a good look, everyone. This is the flowing cloud jade crown, which only a marquis is entitled to wear. How many marquises are there in this dynasty? Apart from my brother-in-law Jiyu Yanghui, all the others are present. Fu Yunjing, with a gaze as sharp as a knife, threw the jade crown, still clinging to a few strands of hair, into my arms. Jiyu Lingi, what do you have to say for yourself now? My heart sank abruptly. A cold sweat broke out all over my back. This jade crown was indeed the one Yang Hui wore today. Could someone really have released Yang Hui after I left? No, that's not right. Lord Su spat at me fiercely. With the evidence now clear, are you still trying to argue? I gritted my teeth, stared straight at Fu Yunjing, and let out a mocking laugh. This is truly bizarre. My brother and I have just returned to the capital from the border. Although we don't attend many banquets, we have never made any mistakes. Why is it that today, of all days, when I specifically told my brother to stay close to you, brother-in-law, and learn proper etiquette? This incident had to happen. Who exactly is the one having an affair with Su Wanyua, framing my brother and making our Jiyu family take the blame? You're talking nonsense. Fu Yunjing was furious, barely able to suppress the panic in his eyes. Several colleagues held him back tightly. Everyone shook their heads at me repeatedly. You must be out of your mind, slandering your own husband just to protect that beast of a brother of yours. It's utterly heartless. They're trying to drag the Fu family down with them. The Fu family must have had the worst luck in 8 lifetimes to marry such a disaster. Several kind-hearted aunts and uncles hurried over to pull me aside. Lingi, Stop making a scene, apologize to Yunjing, and there might still be a way to fix this. I shook off their hands and sneered, admit my mistake, I've done nothing wrong. Someone whispered, Lord Fu and Miss Su grew up together. If there were any secret feelings, how could it be her turn? These words were like a grain of wheat, pricking everyone's ears, causing a strange sensation. Many people instantly understood. Aunt Fu grew anxious and grabbed my arm. You're being foolish. All the men of the Jiyu family have died in battle, leaving only your brother as the sole heir. If this continues and disturbs His Majesty and the Empress Dowager, do you think your brother will come to any good? I couldn't help but recall my previous life. After Yanhui's legs were broken, he lay on the sickbed all day, his wounds festering and emitting a foul odor. He was once the most dazzling young general on the border. In the end, he became a cripple who couldn't even walk. I will never forget the despair in his eyes when he was emaciated and living a life worse than death. I shook off their hands. Better to fight to the death today than to suffer endless torment in the future. I stiffened my neck and raised my voice. Since we each hold our own views, let's take this to the imperial court and seek judgment from His Majesty and the Empress Dowager. If my brother, Jiyu Yanghui, truly committed such a beastly act, then whether he is to be executed, dismembered, or torn apart by 5 horses, he deserves it. The Jiyu family will never keep such a disgraceful descendant. Su Wanyue trembled, instinctively looking at Fu Yunjing, her eyes somewhat flustered. Fu Yunjing gave her a reassuring glance. Then fearlessly scolded me, stubborn and unyielding. The crowd began to persuade again. Family scandals should not be aired in public. Why must this be brought before the emperor? Madam Jiyu, are you trying to ruin both the Jiyu and Fu families? It seems she's determined to drag everyone from her own family and her husband's family down with her. Finally, my father-in-law, Grand Secretary Fu, who had remained silent all along, could no longer hold back from speaking. Our Fu family is a scholarly household. Marrying you into our family was originally out of respect for your father and brother, who sacrificed their lives for the country. I never expected you to be so ignorant of propriety, lacking in wifely virtue, disrupting the birthday banquet, and falsely accusing your husband. He looked at Fu Yunjing and said coldly, such a troublemaker is of no use to keep. Yunjing, write the letter of divorce, divorce her. And then let her go and lodge a complaint with the emperor. Our Fu family has no such daughter-in-law. Fu Yunjing frowned deeply. This is not the scene he wanted to see, but since things have come to this, he could only have someone bring paper and a brush, write a letter of divorce, and haughtily throw it at my feet. Jiyu Lingyi, you are jealous and vicious, disrespectful to your husband, and have framed a good person. Today, I, Fu Yunjing, divorce you and cast you out. From now on, men and women may marry as they please, with no further connection between us. I picked up the letter of divorce and directly tucked it into my bosom. There is only a sense of relief in my heart. Fu Yunjing was somewhat surprised to see that I showed no sign of sadness or distress. He looked at me suspiciously. Feeling an indescribable sense of irritation, the group made their way in a grand procession to the imperial presence. The Empress Dowager and His Majesty listened to the account, their expressions turning grave. The emperor furrowed his brows and looked at me. Lady Jiyu, if Jiyu Yanghui truly has feelings for the Su family, I am not unwilling to grant them happiness. I knelt upright and kowtowed heavily. Your Majesty, please be discerning. My father taught us siblings from a young age to be loyal to the sovereign, love our country, and restrain ourselves to uphold propriety. I believe in my brother, and I am certain he would never dare to commit such an act of defiance against the imperial grace or engage in such disgraceful behavior. There are many doubts surrounding this matter, and I implore your Majesty to thoroughly investigate the truth. If Yanghui is truly guilty, the Jiyu family will willingly accept any punishment. My attitude was resolute. The emperor paced back and forth before me and the others for a moment before finally saying, "Since you insist, then let the trial proceed." I took a deep breath and, under the watchful eyes of everyone, stepped forward myself to untie the burlap sack that had been thrown before the hall. My palms were unconsciously slick with a layer of clammy, cold sweat. Even my limbs trembled slightly, uncontrollably. What the candlelight first revealed was the ancestral GU family white jade pendant hanging around that person's neck. My fingers trembled, a chill ran from the soles of my feet to the pit of my stomach. Could it be that, even after being reborn, I had failed to prevent anything? Immediately after, the sack was completely pulled off, revealing an unexpected face. Upon seeing me, the person's eyes lit up, and they grabbed my sleeve, pouting and acting coquettishly. "Sister," before the person in the sack could clear their hoarse throat. Su Wanue's wailing echoed throughout the entire hall. "Your Majesty, Empress Dowager." She broke free from the supporting hands, crawled forward a few steps on her knees, and knocked her forehead heavily against the golden bricks. "Your subject's purity has been tarnished, and since the GU family refuses to acknowledge it, what face does your subject have to continue living in this world? I beg your Majesty and the Empress Dowager to show mercy and grant me death. To preserve the honor of the Su family." She wept with heart-wrenching sobs, as if she might faint at any moment. Lord Su, in his grief, beat his chest and stamped his feet, tears streaming down his aged face as he kowtowed repeatedly before the imperial throne. "Your Majesty, I have failed in teaching my daughter, and my family has suffered this unexpected calamity, but my daughter is a candidate for the imperial selection, a name recorded in the royal registry. To be treated with such contempt and humiliation now, I am ashamed to face the imperial grace and have no face to see my colleagues. It would be better for me to accompany my unfortunate daughter and die together. To be done with it." Fu Yunjing stepped forward at the right moment, holding in both hands the blood-stained handkerchief that symbolized Su Wanue's chastity. His voice was filled with sorrow and indignation. "Your Majesty, Your Highness, the physical evidence is here. Jiyu Yanghui, as a marquis, has committed acts more beastly than any animal, if he is not severely punished. How can we uphold the law of the land and bring comfort to the innocent? I beseech your Majesty to stand up for Miss Su and grant her justice. Punish the Avildor severely to serve as a warning to others." His words were resonant and powerful, presenting the image of a loyal minister who was righteous and indignant, pleading for justice on behalf of a vulnerable woman. At this moment, in the great hall, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone watched the three of them weeping bitterly, their expressions strange, as if they had something to say but hesitated. The emperor's voice was icy. "Su Wanue, I ask you once more, were you truly molested by this man?" Su Wanue's heart pounded wildly. The emperor's tone frightened her more than his angry rebuke. But there was no turning back once the arrow was released. She could only grit her teeth and see the act through to the end. "Yes," her voice choked with endless humiliation and fragility. "Every word I have spoken is true. If there is even half a lie, may I be struck by lightning and die a miserable death." As she spoke, she looked sorrowfully at Fu Yunjing. Fu Yunjing immediately responded, "Your Majesty, when I rushed into that secluded place, I saw with my own eyes Jiyu Yanghui attempting to assault Miss Su. I swear on my life that what I saw was absolutely true. I only regret that I arrived a step too late." "Good, very good," the emperor sighed. Then fiercely threw the prayer beads in his hand onto the ground. "At this point, you still dare to deceive your sovereign? What a Su Wanue, what a Fu Yunjing. Lift your head for me and see clearly how this man has disrespected you." Only then did the two realize something was amiss. Looking up in alarm, they saw Jiyu Yanghui raise a hand and adjust the wildly disheveled hair on their head. A bright, beautiful face, tinged with a hint of bewilderment, was revealed. The person's almond-shaped eyes were wide open, filled with lingering fear and deep confusion. Her lips were slightly pouted, exuding the proud and noble air of a royal descendant. This was not Jiyu Yanghui at all. This was clearly the beloved Princess Yong'an, whom everyone in the palace recognized. Princess Yong'an. The people who had followed in behind, unable to clearly see the face of the person in the sack, couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. The entire hall erupted in an uproar. Su Huanyue's face instantly drained of all color, her eyes widening as if they might split open. She stared fixedly at Princess Yong'an's beautiful face, her lips trembling uncontrollably. It was as if someone had grabbed her by the throat, leaving her unable to make a sound. The entire person seemed to have had their bones pulled out, collapsing on the ground, with only their body trembling uncontrollably and violently. Fu Yunjing felt as if struck by a thunderbolt. His mind exploded with a boom. Leaving a complete blank, all the carefully feigned expressions on his face froze, leaving only a terrifyingly extreme stupor and ashen pallor. Even the chastity blood handkerchief in his hands now felt like a red-hot branding iron, scalding his trembling hands so much that he could hardly hold on to it. Princess Yong'an rubbed the back of her neck. She blinked her eyes, her gaze sweeping over the limp Su Huanyue before turning to look at Fu Yunjing, whose face was as pale as death. Finally, she tilted her head playfully and looked toward her father and grandmother on the imperial throne. Father Emperor, Imperial Grandmother, what is going on here? I merely wanted to slip out to offer my birthday wishes to Imperial Grandmother, and now I've become a lecher who has tarnished a young lady's reputation. Her gaze finally settled on Su Huanyue. Hey, you were just crying and saying I ruined your reputation, weren't you? How could I, a mere woman, possibly have taken liberties with you? I fought back tears of overwhelming joy and stepped forward. Might I ask, Your Highness, why you are wearing my younger brother's clothes? Princess Yong'an snorted. This princess was passing by Jiaohua Hall when I discovered that young Marquis Jiyu was tied up and locked in the side hall by some audacious person, right under the emperor's nose. At the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, someone actually dared to lay hands on a distinguished marquis. I naturally had to get to the bottom of this. She straightened her small chest, trying her best to look serious. So I had someone temporarily borrow the clothes of the unconscious young Master Jiyu to wear, thinking I could disguise myself as him and see if I could catch the villain who kidnapped him. But as soon as I walked into a dark, unlit corner of the Imperial Garden, I felt a sharp pain in the back of my head, as if someone had hit me with a stick, and then I knew nothing more. When I woke up, I was here and was accused of being a lecher who tarnished someone's innocence. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. She stamped her foot and glared at Fu Yunjing and Su Huanyue in fury. You say you saw it with your own eyes. What did you see? Did you see this princess forcing herself on her? Every word was like a resounding slap, striking Fu Yunjing and Su Huanyue hard across the face. Cold sweat dripped from Fu Yunjing's forehead, and he felt dizzy and disoriented. Su Huanyue was utterly devastated. All her schemes, all her performances, everything was ruined the moment Princess Yong'an appeared. Lord Su had long since collapsed to the ground, unable even to cry. The officials and nobles who had just moments ago considered themselves righteous, accused the Jiyu family, and sympathized with Su Huanyue. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded, their expressions a vivid spectacle. Their faces were filled with anger at being manipulated by Fu Yunjing and Su Huanyue. They had almost become the pawns in the hands of this despicable couple. The emperor slowly rose from the dragon throne, his voice eerily calm. What a fine play of framing the loyal and deceiving the sovereign. The Empress Dowager angrily slapped the armrest of her phoenix throne. Good, very good. What a pair of heartless, venomous creatures. If it weren't for Ling Yi's desperate efforts today, the last remaining descendant of the loyal and heroic house of Zhenbei, the final scion of the great Liang's noble lineage, would have been wrongfully condemned to death at this birthday banquet by you, this adulterous pair. Your hearts are truly deserving of death. I immediately lifted my skirt hem and knelt heavily before the emperor. Empress Dowager, please calm your anger, I dare to say. I truly do not understand and cannot help but speak out. My Gu family is merely a small marquisate. Miss Su is a candidate for palace election, destined to serve the royal descendants in the future, with boundless prospects. What virtue or ability does my younger brother have to catch Miss Su's eye, even to the point of using her own pure reputation as bait, devising such a vicious scheme, insisting on marrying into my Gu family? As soon as these words were spoken, the eyes of everyone in the hall focused on Su Wanyue. Indeed, why would a candidate for imperial consort selection like Su Wanyue, with such beauty, risk framing a young marquis from a noble household? This simply defies logic, unless, could it be that she cannot pass the virginity check for the imperial consort selection in 3 days? Censor Zhao from the censorate spoke up. 3 days from now will be the final physical re-examination for the selected candidates. Experienced matrons from the palace will personally inspect them to ensure that all candidates are pure and chaste, thus qualifying them to serve the royal family. Lord Zhao paused his words, his gaze fixed on Su Wanyue's face, which had instantly turned as pale as paper. I'm afraid this Miss Su has already lost her purity. Once discovered, it would be the grave crime of deceiving the emperor, bringing disaster upon the entire family. That's why, driven to desperation, they resorted to a risky move, attempting to use today's birthday banquet, under the watchful eyes of everyone, to pin the blame for the loss of chastity on young Master Gu. This way, they could both cover up their own impurity and force a marriage into the Marquis's household, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The crowd instantly understood. So that's how it is. What a deep scheme. What a vicious calculation. Even we have been counted among them. Su Wanyue shook her head in panic. No, that's not it. Ungrateful daughter. You shameless, ungrateful daughter. Lord Su finally understood at that moment. He could no longer care about appearances and lunged forward, delivering a fierce kick to Su Wanyue. You've completely disgraced my Su family. Tell me, who is the adulterer? Su Wanyue was knocked to the ground by the blow, covering her face and sobbing uncontrollably. I watched the farce unfold with a cold gaze. The stone that had weighed on his heart for 2 lifetimes was slowly being lifted. A deceived official's family member couldn't help but speak up. Lord Su, isn't it obvious? Who has been jumping the highest in this hall today? Instantly, countless gazes turned sharply toward Fu Yunjing. Lord Su trembled all over, his bloodshot eyes fixed fiercely on Fu Yunjing. He rushed over like a madman, grabbed Fu Yunjing by the collar, and roared hoarsely. You and my daughter grew up together. If you had feelings for her, you could have come to my Su family to propose marriage earlier. I might not have refused. Why wait until she was selected as a court lady to do such a disgraceful thing? An official who was at odds with Lord Su sneered and coolly mocked. Lord Su, I'm afraid you've lost your senses. Lord Fu's ambitions are as high as the heavens. How could he possibly look favorably upon the household of a mere 4th-rank official like you? The Gu family is a genuine marquisate, built on military achievements, with deep-rooted heritage. Master Fu, it seems you want to have your cake and eat it too. You desire Miss Su herself, yet you look down on the Su family's status, and you also want to use the Gu family as a stepping stone to climb even higher. But who would have thought that you would dirty the pot and then try to throw the dirty water on someone else, only to end up losing control of the situation? Master Su was as if struck by lightning, staggering back a step, pointing at Fu Yunjing. You beast, you animal. Su Wanyue just covered her face and wept, not uttering a word. The Empress Dowager, her face full of disgust, pointed at Su Wanyue and ordered, "Guards, drag this shameless thing away for me and have her examined." Too strong. Expressionless matrons immediately stepped forward. They dragged Su Wanyue, who was crying and struggling, out of the hall as if she were a dead dog. Seeing that the situation was beyond his control, Fu Yunjing fell to his knees with a thud, knocking his head against the ground. "Your Majesty, Empress Dowager, I am guilty. A month ago, after drinking, I lost my composure and inadvertently offended Wanyue. I truly did not mean to disrespect the royal family. I know I was wrong. I beg your Majesty to spare my life." He wept bitterly, trying to brush everything off as an accident after drinking. But, immediately, a straightforward military officer spat out a curse. "Fu Yunjing, don't you dare downplay this. Losing control after drinking, I think you're just shamelessly bold. Since you've touched the girl, you should take responsibility. Even if it's as a concubine, you should give her a proper status. You care about your own reputation and refuse to admit it. Yet you came up with such a vicious scheme to frame your own brother-in-law. Are you even human? Everyone knows that Marquis Jiyu is pure-hearted and filial. Ever since his sister married into your Fu family, he has shown you, his brother-in-law, nothing but respect and trust. How could you betray him like this? To place this green hat on his head, forcing him to bear a stain he can never wash away for the rest of his life, is your heart truly so black?" Public opinion completely reversed. All the sympathy that had been directed toward the Jiyu family moments ago now turned 100-fold, 1,000-fold, into contempt and hatred for Fu Yunjing. Two matrons who had conducted the examination entered from the side hall. "Your Majesty, Your Highness, I report that Su Wanyue is no longer a virgin and is already with child. Heavens, she's even carrying a child in secret." Gasps of shock echoed throughout the hall. "Excellent, Fu Yunjing. Not only is he malicious at heart, but he even schemed to have his bastard inherit the title of the Marquis of Zhunbei. That's a title the Jiyu family earned with their blood and lives on the battlefield, defending the nation. You've schemed your way through everything, utterly devoid of conscience." Fu Yunjing's father could no longer maintain his dignified composure as a senior official. His aged face flushed crimson as he rushed forward and delivered a fierce kick to his son, who was kneeling on the ground. "You wretched creature, I'll beat you to death, you ungrateful, despicable wretch. Old Marquis Jiyu has shown immense kindness to you and to our Fu family. You unfilial son, how dare you repay him like this? You are going to ruin the Fu family's century-old reputation in one fell swoop." Grand Tutor Fu used all his strength in this kick, driven by rage and panic, and it landed squarely between Fu Yunjing's legs. "Ah!" Fu Yunjing let out a piercing, inhuman scream. The entire person was kicked flying backward 3 to 4 jong away, landing heavily on the ground. He curled into a ball, his hands tightly covering his lower body, his face as pale as paper, veins bulging on his forehead, and large beads of cold sweat instantly soaking through his clothes. He writhed and convulsed in agony on the ground. Everyone who saw his miserable state felt a chill run down their spines, yet not a single person felt any sympathy at that moment. The midwife who had examined her added another statement. After repeated confirmation by this servant, Lady Su's pulse indicates that she has been pregnant for a full 2 months. Fu Yunjing, who was writhing in excruciating pain, froze abruptly upon hearing these words. He struggled to lift his head, his face a twisted mix of agony and disbelief, and glared fiercely at Su Wanyue, who had been dragged back and was equally pale. 2 months pregnant. You wretch, you lied to me. How dare you deceive me? We only had that one time a month ago. Tell me, whose bastard child is this? Speak up. Ignoring the excruciating pain, he went mad and began violently beating Su Wanyue. Su Wanyue was beaten to the ground, unable to get up, and suddenly let out a sharp laugh. "Ha ha. Fu Yunjing, how dare you ask me? All you men, every single one of you, are no good." She probably felt that in the current situation, there was no way to turn things around, and she began to speak recklessly. "The 4th prince slept with me and promised me the position of a concubine. I'm carrying his child, but he won't acknowledge it. You slept with me and said you would marry me into your household, but you won't acknowledge it either, and you're forcing me onto that young brat, Him.He. You're all cowards, all of you are spineless beasts. No one expected that this matter would even involve a prince, although the fourth prince's reputation for being a libertine was no secret in the capital. No one was surprised that he would do such a thing, but to have it exposed publicly in such a situation still made everyone gasp in shock. It was easy to imagine that from then on, the fourth prince would have no chance at all of becoming the crown prince. On the throne, the emperor's face was so dark it seemed as if water could drip from it. He had no patience to watch their antics any longer and directly ordered severe punishment. Su Wanyue, with her improper conduct, deceiving the throne and framing loyal officials, is hereby stripped of her status as a court lady and thrown into the imperial prison, awaiting further judgment. The Su family failed in educating their daughter. Su Bingjong is stripped of his official position, and the entire family is exiled 3,000 li, never to be employed again. Fu Yunjing. With evil intentions, ungrateful, defiling maidens, deceiving the emperor and framing others, committing heinous crimes, strip him of all official positions and honors, throw him into the imperial prison, and interrogate him strictly. Grand Secretary Fu failed to discipline his son strictly, fine him 3 years' salary, and have him reflect on his mistakes behind closed doors. The emperor's gaze swept over the fourth prince like ice blades, confine him to his mansion. And he cannot leave without an imperial decree, a series of punishments, delivered with overwhelming force and leaving no room for doubt. The guard stepped forward and dragged away the screaming Fu Yunjing and the madly laughing Su Wanyue. A farce finally ended with the deserved punishment. I brought Him.He, who had finally been untied, back to the mansion. After dismissing the attendants, my younger brother rubbed his reddened wrists, looking somewhat aggrieved. Sister, why did you tie me up at the beginning today? And you tied me so tightly, I almost thought you were possessed by some evil spirit. I look at my brother before me, alive and well, with clear, bright eyes, thinking of how utterly defeated and broken he was after losing his leg in my past life. My eyes suddenly grow hot. I pull him to sit down and lay out everything that happened in my past life, as well as the perilously close reversal of fortune today. Telling him the whole story from beginning to end. After listening, Him.He remained silent for a long time. His face turned pale, then ashen, and a fine layer of cold sweat broke out on his forehead. I couldn't stop the lingering fear. I grasped his cold hand. Yang-Hui, your sister has already died once. I will never let anyone hurt you or the Jiu family again. He let out a heavy sigh, and his gaze gradually grew resolute. Sis, from now on, I'll do as you say. The dust seemed to have settled. However, in less than half a month, a piece of news arrived that sent a chill down my spine. Fu Yunjing was actually released from prison. He made such a big mistake, yet he wasn't executed or punished severely. Although he lost his official status, his life is safe, the guard sent to investigate reported. I heard that on that day, Lord Fu was so enraged that he kicked him right in the vital spot. Fu Yunjing was already injured at the root, and the imperial physician diagnosed that he would be no different from a eunuch in the palace for the rest of his life. Upon hearing this, His Majesty felt a sense of relief and turned a blind eye, granting Lord Fu's request for medical parole. After listening, I couldn't help but find it somewhat amusing. This truly is a case of good and evil eventually meeting their just rewards. I just never expected that. Not long after Fu Yunjing was carried back to the Fu family to recuperate from his injuries, he actually dragged his still unhealed body to the Marquis's residence. His face was pale and gaunt, his whole body hunched over, no longer showing the graceful demeanor of the past. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he actually knelt down with a thud. Lingy, I know I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Come back with me. Okay, I was blinded before, let's start over. I promise to treat you well from now on, to be good only to you, with no other thoughts. We still have a child. You can't let our child grow up without a father. My brow furrowed slightly, jumped back a step, avoiding his hand. How could Fu Yunjing know that I am pregnant? I have only been pregnant for just over a month now. In my previous life, even I didn't find out until I was more than 2 months along. Unless, he has also been reborn. How laughable. I looked at his hypocritical, pleading face, thinking of his ruthless cruelty when he strangled me in my past life, and his malicious scheming against Yang-Hui. I felt nothing but utter disgust. I let out a cold laugh. Fu Yunjing, since you've also been reborn, you should understand, in our previous life, this child was killed by you while still in my womb, never having the chance to come into this world. Fu Yunjing's pupils suddenly contracted. This time, I've already taken the abortion medicine, so naturally, he won't be coming again. The plea on Fu Yunjing's face instantly froze. What are you saying, Lingyi? Don't do anything foolish, that's our flesh and blood. I couldn't be bothered to watch him put on an act any longer. Didn't you know, when you strangled me in our past life, that our child was about to be born? Fu Yunjing wanted to say more, but the guards held him down firmly. His eyes were wide with fury, his throat convulsed, and with a phut sound, a mouthful of blood gushed out. He collapsed. Utterly defeated, he was hastily carried away by the panicked servants who had accompanied the Fu family. It was later said that after returning, Fu Yunjing fell gravely ill, coughing up blood incessantly, seeing that this son had become a useless person, and even more a disgrace to the Fu family and a potential source of trouble that could explode at any moment, and fearing that the emperor might one day recall this matter and feel displeased. The Fu family soon announced to the public that Fu Yunjing, overwhelmed by illness and injury, consumed by depression, and beyond the reach of medicine, had already passed away from illness. The truth behind it all, no one has delved deeply into. It is only known that Lord Fu's actions are indeed consistently clean, decisive, and heartless. They, father and son, share the same bloodline deep down. They have always been willing to resort to ruthless measures. As for the fourth prince, after being confined to his residence for half a year, the emperor issued an edict, sending him far away to the miasmal lands of the southwest, granting him a nominal and idle princely title, and ordering that he must never return to the capital without a decree for the rest of his life. His life was thus completely severed from the center of power. After handling all the trivial matters in the capital, my brother and I returned to the Jiyu family's fief in the northwest. Here, the sky is high and the land is vast, with a simple and honest folk culture. It is the territory that the Jiyu family has guarded for generations. Yang-Hui learned military strategy and martial arts from the veteran general, gradually acquiring some of the demeanor of his father and elder brother in their youth. The winds of the border city swept away the powdered glamour and the scent of conspiracies from the capital, bringing with them the fragrance of green grass and fresh soil. The rest of my life is long, but I know that my family and I can finally live in peace and happiness, safe and sound year after year. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I competed with my biological sister for Wei Heng for 10 years. In the first life, I married him as I wished. After we married, everyone said he loved me to the point of madness, which was why I bore 6 children in 7 years. When the 7th child was about to be born, he disposed of the mother to keep the child, forcing me to drink 3 bowls of Crane's Crest Red. Just before I closed my eyes, he finally told me the truth. The one I truly wanted to marry back then was never you. Since you were so eager to wed, you deserved to be nothing but a breeding tool. Now there are enough children, and you have no value anymore. I died with resentment. In the second life, I gave the marriage proposal letter to my sister. You go, he loves you. I thought this time everything would end happily for everyone. Unexpectedly, 5 years later, the maid brought back a large water vat, inside of which was my sister, who had been turned into a human pig. Her limbs were all severed. Her eyes were gone, only her voice remained as clear and crisp as ever. She wailed and cried bitterly at me. Sister, Wei-Hung doesn't love me at all. It's not me he wants to marry. He said the only thing I have to offer is this voice of mine, and he makes me sing tunes for him day and night. Whenever I complain even once, he tortures me in return. Last night, he said he was tired of listening to my songs. If it weren't for the maid risking her life to save me, I wouldn't have made it back. But my sister was too badly injured and passed away less than 2 months after returning home. When I opened my eyes again, it was already the third life. Looking at the marriage proposal letter sent by the Wei family, my sister and I exchanged glances. Who exactly does this guy want to marry? Mother looked at the matchmaking letter without a name. Just as confused as we were, she cautiously probed, is the young Marquis intending to marry Qingzi? I am Shen Qingzi. The reason Mother thought of me first is because Wei-Heng and I grew up together since childhood. Everyone thinks we are a perfect match made in heaven. I used to think so too, but now, I understand everything. The person in Wei-Heng's heart is not me. I was still in a daze when Wei-Heng nodded calmly and uttered 2 words. It's possible. This left my mother even more bewildered. She frowned slightly and said, Young Marquis, you can answer yes or no. What do you mean by can? Wei-Heng remained as calm as ever. I mean I can marry Qingzi. I finally snapped back to reality and refused without hesitation. I won't marry. The nightmare of my first life is still vividly imprinted in my mind. Back then, Wei-Heng had answered my mother in the same way. But I mistakenly thought he was just shy, expressing his affection for me in such a reserved manner. Fearing he might feel embarrassed, I urged my mother to agree without a second thought. After marrying into the Wei family for 8 years, there was nothing unusual. The only thing that I found a bit overwhelming was the matter of pregnancy. Wei-Heng coaxed me, saying he liked children and wanted the family to flourish, so he never gave me a moment to catch my breath. Every time I finished my postpartum confinement, he would start pestering me again. And so, over the course of 7 years, I gave birth to 6 children. People in the capital gradually shifted from praising my fertility to envying the deep affection between Wei-Heng and me. Influenced by public opinion, I naturally came to believe that Wei-Heng loved me deeply, which was why he wanted to have children with me, until the winter of the 8th year. After giving birth to my 7th son, I suffered a postpartum hemorrhage due to extreme physical weakness. The physicians were doing their utmost to save me when Wei-Heng suddenly waved them away. Before I could ask, he personally forced 3 bowls of crane's crown poison down my throat. Only on his deathbed did he finally let me die with clarity. Qingzi, I never loved you. You were the one who insisted on marrying me. I simply didn't want to defy fate. Now that we have 7 children, you, as a childbearing tool, have served your purpose. Go in peace. Filled with resentment, I endured the excruciating pain in my organs, crying and demanding an answer. Wei-Heng hesitated for a moment and said, All right, I'll tell you, what I truly love is your. But before I could hear the rest, I breathed my last. The agony of my first life made my whole body tremble, but it also left my mind exceptionally clear. I emphasized each word, speaking slowly and deliberately. Mother, I will not marry him. My mother watched me grow up, and she knew how much I liked Wei-Heng. The first time he went to the battlefield, I waited for him at the border for a whole month. When he returned injured, I took care of him day and night for another half a month. My mother said it would damage a young lady's reputation, but I didn't care. I only wanted him to be well, so Mother was a bit puzzled. Sierra, didn't you say before that you would only marry the young Marquis? What a great opportunity this is. I shook my head firmly. Those were the rash words of youth. They don't count. Besides, I already have someone in my heart, and he will come to propose marriage soon. Mother's face was filled with shock, and she glared at me fiercely, as if blaming me for not speaking up sooner. She turned her head and forced a smile, saying, "Young Marquis, if Qingxi is unwilling, there's nothing we can do. How about letting Qingyin marry instead? She likes you a lot too." Shen Qingyin, who had been silent all along, trembled all over and shook her head vigorously, saying, "Mother, I won't marry either." Mother's willow leaf eyebrows shot up as she scolded, "What's wrong with you?" Qingyin glanced at me and stammered, "I have someone I like too. He will also come to propose marriage soon, after father's death." Mother had been the one managing the household. Although she is usually strict, she genuinely loves us sisters from the bottom of her heart, seeing that neither of us was willing to marry. She didn't want to force us either, so she returned the marriage proposal to Wei Heng, looking apologetic as she said, "I'm sorry, young Marquis, my daughters have their own thoughts, and as their mother, I can't just act on my own. Perhaps you could look elsewhere." Probably feeling that he had lost face, Wei Heng, who had been composed all along, was now furious. He blurted out, "No way, the person I marry must come from your family." Then he slammed the marriage proposal document on the table and turned to leave. Before leaving, he only left one sentence, "You have 3 days to decide who will marry. If you can't choose, I will simply draw lots and request an imperial decree for the marriage." Only the 3 of us, mother and daughters, remained in the room. Mother anxiously pushed us sisters and urged, "The old Marquis and the Empress are cousins. The imperial marriage decree is just a word from Her Majesty the Empress. Hurry and have your sweethearts come to propose. If you're late, it'll be too late." Shen Qingyin and I stared at each other in wide-eyed astonishment. All these years, we have been fighting tooth and nail over Wei Heng, never sparing a thought for any other man. Those who once admired us have either already married or had their hearts broken. Where on earth could we find a sweetheart willing to marry us in such a short time? Mother noticed our unusual behavior and frowned, asking, "You two aren't just making this up, are you?" We could no longer keep it hidden, so we simply told our mother everything about being reborn for 3 lifetimes. It took her a long time to accept this explanation. She held my sisters and my hands, tears streaming uncontrollably down her face. Indeed, as a mother, how could she not feel heartache and sorrow upon hearing that her eldest daughter was poisoned and her youngest was turned into a human swine? So, who does young Master Wei truly love? Why must he marry both of you? I shook my head in confusion, feeling guilty as I said, "I died too hastily back then and didn't hear it." I turned my gaze toward my sister. She also said helplessly, "I have no idea either. Wei Heng never told me anything." After a long and exhausting day, we finally decided to split up and take action. Mother went out to see if she could find anyone willing to marry us sisters. Shen Qingyin was tasked with investigating all the women in the household to see who had any connection with Wei Heng. And since I was the most familiar with Wei Heng's temperament, I had to go find him and sound him out. When I saw Wei Heng again, he was painting in the study. It was a portrait of a woman, but without any facial features. Seeing me approach and ask, he calmly set down his brush. Just like before, he smiled with just the right amount of warmth. "Can't you see? Of course, I drew you." My heart ached. Wei Heng particularly enjoyed painting portraits of women without facial features, dressed in red, green, or white robes. They were either playing the qin, dancing, or reading. Every time I ask him, he says it's me. The reason I don't paint the facial features is because I am the most beautiful in his heart, and a brush cannot capture that. Whenever I hear this, I am always overjoyed and have never delved into the inappropriateness of it. Now that my disposition has changed, I have noticed the anomalies in the details. The woman in the portrait has a small mole on the right side of her neck, but I do not. I stopped hiding the truth and got straight to the point. Wei-Heng, this isn't me, is it? I don't have a mole on my right neck. Wei-Heng stiffened, a rare reaction from him. When he came back to his senses, he looked up at me and asked, Aki, do you really want to know who she is? I held my breath, focusing intently on waiting for Wei-Heng's next words. But then he changed the subject and said, silly, that really is you. That's not a mole on your neck, it's ink that accidentally got on you. Since we were children, how have I treated you? Don't you know? I was left speechless for a moment. Wei-Heng had indeed treated me very well. The old Marquis and my father were close friends, and the two of us had been inseparable since we could remember. When I was a child, I was playful and didn't like studying, always sneaking out of class. Every time my parents wanted to punish me, Wei-Heng would come to protect me. He promised my parents that he would personally teach me the lessons I had missed. I always managed to escape punishment because of him, and he wasn't just saying it for fun, he genuinely sacrificed his own time, staying up late to tutor me. He even secretly studied their admonitions for women on his own and explained it to me. Once, I teased him for a grown man learning such things, and he sighed, telling me he was afraid I might be criticized in the future. That time, a warmth inexplicably rose in my heart. It was also then that I suddenly thought it would be nice to marry him. Later, for his sake, I learned to behave and restrained my nature. I truly became a proper noble lady from a distinguished family. Standing by his side, I would often hear others praise us as a match made in heaven. Even the Empress was very pleased with me, repeatedly urging him to treat me well. He took these words to heart and treated me better and better. When I fell ill, he stayed by my side day and night, personally boiling water and brewing medicine. I was bullied by others, and no matter who it was, he would always step forward immediately to protect me. Even when we got married, he prepared a grand dowry for me, saying he didn't want anyone to look down on me. Such a good person. I really can't understand when he changed. The bitterness rising in my throat pulled my thoughts back. I rubbed my nose and asked in a muffled voice, Wei-Heng, if you truly have me in your heart, why didn't you write my name clearly on the marriage proposal? Wei-Heng was slightly taken aback and said, you and Qingyan have been fighting over me all these years, making it known to the whole city. I didn't write it clearly because I was afraid of hurting her self-esteem. After all, she is your sister. I thought that as long as you accepted the marriage proposal first, she would feel better about it. It's a pity I didn't expect that you would misunderstand me because of this and stubbornly refuse me out of pique. In fact, both Wei-Heng and I knew that Shen Qingyan didn't really like him that much. What Shen Qingyan enjoyed was the feeling of competing with me. As children, we fought over food, clothing, and our parents' affection. When we grew up and found that boring, she started going after the people I liked. My distraction made Wei-Heng think I was wavering. He seized the opportunity to press on. So, Aki, I've made up my mind. The one I've always wanted to marry is you. In 3 days, I'll come directly to propose to you, without any more actions that could cause misunderstandings. Will you forgive me just this once we're married? I'll make your favorite lotus seed cake for you every day. How about that? Looking at his sincere expression, I fought back tears and choked out, all right, I'll give you one chance, but let's skip the formal proposal. If Qingyan finds out, she'll make a fuss. 3 days from now, you can come directly to take me as your bride. Wei-Heng let out a long sigh of relief, his expression one of having regained something precious. Upon returning home, Shen Qingyan and her mother learned the whole story and were left utterly stunned. Shen Qingyan, in a rare departure from her usual self, didn't confront me head-on. Instead, she raised her hand and slapped me. Shen Qingzi, can't you just wake up? Do you still want to marry such a man? Do you think the suffering in your first life wasn't enough? For the first time, I didn't get angry with Shen Qingyan. Instead, I calmly sewed the wedding dress and said, I must marry. But the one to be married is not me. Shen Qingyan stood frozen in place, her brows slightly furrowed. She asked me uneasily, "You're not thinking of making me marry, are you, sis? We're blood sisters. Compete as we might, I've never thought of harming you. If you dare to trick me, I'll really turn against you." I gave her a sideways glance. "What are you thinking? In my previous life, I only let you marry because I thought Wei Heng liked you. Now that I know your fate, how could I ever harm you again? Shen Qingyan, you really underestimate me." Shen Qingyan finally breathed a sigh of relief and continued asking, "So you mean, have a maid from the household take her place in the marriage?" I still shook my head. Wei Heng is a proud and arrogant man. If he doesn't like someone, how could he possibly take a maid seriously? Shen Qingyan immediately deflated, saying irritably, "This won't work. That won't work either. What exactly do you want to do? Besides the two of us and the maids, who else could marry?" I looked up at my mother and said softly, "Mother." My mother took 2 steps back in shock, waving her hands repeatedly. "I can't do it. I'm old enough to be Wei Heng's mother." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "No, I wanted to ask you for a favor. I think I have a rough idea of who Wei Heng has in his heart. Actually, I didn't notice it at first." Wei Heng played his part flawlessly, making anyone who heard him believe he was truly sincere toward me. But his last sentence gave him away. My favorite was never lotus seed cake. On the contrary, I have always detested the taste of lotus seeds. But he did remind me, there is indeed someone in the Shun residence who particularly loves lotus seed cakes, and before I returned, I specifically went to confirm that the person indeed has a small mole on the right side of their neck. So I've made up my mind, rather than getting entangled in a life or death struggle with Wei Heng and causing a scene in the palace, it's better to pretend to agree first and then let the rice cook until it's done. I leaned close to my mother's ear and whispered my instructions. She immediately went out to make preparations without delay. Shen Qingyan leaned on the table and asked with a self-mocking smile, "Sister, after all these years of rivalry between us, are you willing to lose to someone like this?" I calmly smiled and replied, "Naturally, I feel a bit of it, but more than unwillingness, I want to avenge you and me from our past 2 lives." Shen Qingyan linked her arm with mine, which was the first time she had ever been this close to me. "All right, sister, let's not fight anymore. This time, we sisters will stand together and wait to see them make a fool of themselves." Qingyan wasn't just speaking in anger, but the fact that she was marrying over there was itself a huge joke. Wasn't Wei Heng the one who loved her most and wanted to marry her? I want to see how Wei Heng will handle the situation when she is actually sent over. The day before Wei Heng was to welcome the bride, my mother brought 2 men. I recognize them. They are the twin sons of the chief minister. Mother excitedly told us, "My daughters, I've worn my legs out running around, and I've finally found someone willing to marry you." The 2 young masters of the Lin family have a good family background and excellent character. Most importantly, they have always admired you. What do you think? Qingyan and I were momentarily taken aback. Mother whispered softly, "Hurry and agree. The Empress is the Marquis's cousin. If he finds out we've forced that person on him and made him lose face, he's sure to make a scene. At that point, besides His Majesty, the only one who could speak up for us would be Chief Minister Lin." Qingyan and I could no longer afford to consider whether we liked it or not, and we both agreed to the 2 marriages in unison. The marriage contract was exchanged on the spot. Holding the marriage contract, the heavy stone in my heart finally settled. I took Qingyan's hand and said, "Let's go. We're sending someone off to be married." Wei Heng made each of us regret for a lifetime. This time, it's his turn. The next day, Qingyan and her mother escorted the bride, veiled in red, onto the bridal sedan chair. Wei Heng bid farewell to his mother with a forced smile, casting one last glance at the Shun residence before leaving. His gaze was filled with suppressed pain and longing. I sneered mockingly, "Wei Heng, don't be sad. In this lifetime, You have already married the person you wanted to marry but couldn't. Early the next morning, Qingyan and I went out to buy some new jewelry for the wedding. Halfway there, I couldn't walk anymore and sat down at a small tea stall to wait for Qingyan. Unexpectedly, two fierce-looking men suddenly appeared. Without a word, they covered my mouth and dragged me away. I struggled desperately, but they found me too troublesome and simply knocked me out with a blow. When I opened my eyes again, I was already in the Wei residence. Hung sat alone on the wedding bed, his eyes wide with fury as he stared at me, his voice as cold as winter ice. Qingxi, explain yourself. Although I was mentally prepared, his stare still made my scalp tingle. I forced myself to stay calm and said, explain what? The young Marquis proposed marriage, but he didn't specify to whom. So, who marries over shouldn't make a difference, right? Before the words had fully left my mouth, Hung rushed over in 3 quick steps and pinned me against the door. His eyes were red and swollen, looking as if he wanted to devour someone. Qingxi, no matter how angry you are, you shouldn't joke about a lifelong matter like this, swapping the bride on the wedding day to mock me. Is that fun? I sniffled, catching a whiff of the ambiguous scent in the air. I pointed at the messy bed and sneered, looks like the young Marquis is enjoying himself quite a bit. Isn't he? Hung seemed somewhat guilty, his words instantly caught in his throat, leaving him speechless for a moment. After a long while, he finally found an appropriate excuse. Last night the red candles burned out, and it was pitch dark. How was I to know the bride had been switched? I let out a scornful laugh, exposing his excuse. The room is filled with the scent of lotus. I suppose it's the incense the bride was wearing. Young Marquis, you've known me for years. Could it be that you didn't know I never use such incense? If you ask me, it's not that the young Marquis didn't know the bride had been switched. He just thinks this bride is quite good, right? Hung was suddenly taken aback. Before he could even speak, the guilt in his eyes had already answered my question for him. I shook my head mockingly and pushed him away. Since the young Marquis is so satisfied, please stop bothering me. From now on, live a good life with your new bride. I strode quickly out of the room, eager to leave this disgusting place as soon as possible. But Hung pulled me in once again. His tone was firm and domineering. You must stay. Later, come with me to serve tea to my parents, as if you had married into the family yesterday. I was taken aback for a moment, then laughed in sheer exasperation. How could the young Marquis come up with such an absurd idea? Never mind whether I agree or not. How could the young Marquis do this to the bride who shared your bed last night? A flicker of pain crossed Hung's eyes, his tone filled with reluctance. I have wronged her, but if people find out I married her, the Marquis's household will never be able to hold its head high again. ACI, the position of the principal wife must still be yours. As for her, I will make it up to her in the future. I always thought Hung was deeply in love with the person in his heart, but after hearing these words today, I finally understood that he has always loved himself the most. Just as I was about to refuse, the old Marquis and the Marquise entered the courtyard. The Marquise affectionately took my hand and said, Qingxi, you must have been exhausted last night, right? I knew you wouldn't be able to get up this morning to serve tea to your parents, so I came to see you myself. The Marquis's wife reached out to tidy my hair, which had been messed up by Hung, and said with a motherly look, It's wonderful. Your father and I have been looking forward to this day for far too long. You've finally become my daughter-in-law. I withdrew my wrist from the Marquis's wife's palm, took 2 steps back, and created some distance between us, bowed respectfully yet distantly. Uncle, Aunt, you've made a mistake. Your daughter-in-law is not me. Qingxi, don't talk nonsense. Hung shouted angrily. The old Marquis and the Marquise looked at each other for a long while before the Marquise awkwardly smoothed things over, saying, Oh, the young couple had a quarrel. It's fine. We'll leave first. You two have a good talk. You're already husband and wife, there's nothing that can't be overcome. The Marquis's wife pulled the old Marquis, ready to leave. I called out to stop them. Uncle, Aunt, I am not speaking out of anger or nonsense. Last night, Chief Minister Lin and his wife happened to be dining at my home, and Qingxi was present throughout the entire time. If the lady of the manor does not believe it, you can go and ask Chief Minister Lin yourself. The old Marquis and the lady of the manor were completely bewildered. The lady of the manor muttered to herself, "That can't be right." The maid said the bridal chamber was bustling all night long. If it wasn't you, then who was hung with? I raised an eyebrow at Wei Heng. Young Marquis, you'd better confess quickly. If we really have to invite Chief Minister Lin, things will get even more embarrassing for you. Wei Heng shot me a fierce glare. But under the sharp gazes of the old Marquis and the Marquise, he had no choice but to back down. He turned and went back inside, and when he came out again, there was a woman by his side. Seeing Wei Heng and the woman holding hands tightly, the old Marquis frowned and asked,